there is an attempt to suppress history and facts on this character who is a lot more ideologically direct and coherent than the last Trump shooter. Keep getting all these Trump shooters. We talked about this, or would-be Trump shooters. When we talked about this the last time, that we couldn't really figure anything out, Aaron, about what was his name? Mark David Chapman? No, that was the guy who shot John Lennon. Matthew Thomas. I even forgot his name. They always have two first names, by the way. They're like calling this guy like Ryan Wayne Routh or something. Like they always come up with the second name when they're a shooter. But the last one had no social media footprint. Very little was known about him. He seemed not to be ideological, seemed just to be a disturbed incel type. Showed up in a commercial for BlackRock. That was one of the few things he did that could be traced. And he was killed. But here you have Ryan Routh. He was taken alive. He was captured on Trump's personal golf course with an AK-47 type rifle with a sniper scope. Secret Service opened fire on him. According to the official story, he fired no shots. He was 300 to 400 yards from the ex-president, but he didn't get to fire any shots at him. And so far, this may have changed, he's only being rung up for firearms violations. And this is someone who was previously, in 2002, arrested for having a standoff, an armed standoff with an assault rifle with police. Someone who the FBI has said was on their radar since at least 2019. But most significantly, someone who claims to be a recruiter and was listed by US media as the top recruiter for the International Legion, bringing volunteers and fighters to the Ukrainian military. So, Aaron, what are your thoughts here on this new would-be shooter, apparent would-be shooter, and the way that this is being covered?
Well, as is the case with all these shooters, he seems to be mentally unwell based on his social media posts and the videos that have appeared of him. But this is awkward for supporters of the Ukraine proxy war, because if we can discern a motive here, I mean, we don't know for sure what his motive is, but it's fair to speculate based on his social media posts, which show him to be a fanatic supporter of the Ukraine proxy war, that one of his possible motivations, if not the motivation, was that he sees Trump as a threat to the proxy war continuing and wanted to eliminate him. Because if you read, you collected some of the excerpts from a self-published book that he put out, and his other post where he, is very clear that he sees this war in Ukraine as an existential fight between good and evil. And when Trump is presented in the media and by Democrats as being like the chief obstacle to this war being won by the West and by Ukraine, then somebody who has a fanatical commitment to seeing this war continue will want to eliminate that threat of Trump. I'm not endorsing the view of Trump as being a actual threat to the Ukraine war, because his time in office, he actually did a lot to make sure that this war happened. He tore up really important arms control treaties with Russia. He sent weapons to Ukraine that Obama wouldn't send. And he didn't do anything to implement the Minsk Accords, which is the peace deal that could have ended that war, which Ukraine and the rebels in the eastern Ukraine reached. But because of Ukrainian ultranationalists and because of neocons in Washington, basically that deal didn't happen. So I'm not endorsing the view that Trump actually is a threat, but certainly he's talked about ending the war in his debate, and he's perceived to be someone who wants to end the war. So you have to wonder if that was the motivation here. And it comes at a bad time for Ukraine, as they're begging Biden for permission to sign off on long-range strikes with U.S. weapons deep into Russia. And this is an example, or this could be an example, I should say, because we need to learn maybe a bit more. But it seems like a pretty good example of blowback, where the U.S. encourages this proxy war, blocks all opportunities for peace, as Victoria Nuland recently admitted. This attracts fanatics from around the world, committed to this cause for whatever reason, and then become, so attached to it that they might be willing to go do something as audacious as try to assassinate a former president who they perceive as an obstacle to the war continuing.
Yeah, I mean, that's at the minimum what took place here. We don't know what kind of contacts Ryan Routh had with who. Was he in touch with the FBI? Who knew that he might have been going to target Trump? We don't know anything about that, but it does seem pretty clear that he was radicalized. I mean, and this is a deeply disturbed individual. I can tell that from his writing and from his past postings and from his criminal history. But this is someone who seems to have been radicalized ideologically and found a strong ideological focus through his experience in Ukraine. I'll get into that in a second. And it's blowback for what the U.S. is doing there, where, as they did in Afghanistan, as they did in Syria, they create a petri dish for complete fanaticism to fester. And that's what happened with the International Legion. So let's take a look at just a quick overview I did at the Grayzone of Ryan Routh's background. I mean, this is him. He set up a wall of flags in Kiev near Maidan Square through his International Volunteer Center that he set up. And this is where he sort of became a magnet for various other contacts, which he's placed online, which include many U.S. journalists, people involved in the Ukrainian SBU, diplomats, and then other people like him, vagabonds, various weirdos, people who made homemade drones to use on the battlefield, extremists from the Azov battalion and the misanthropic group. All these characters gravitated towards him as soon as he set up shop in Kiev. Here he is talking about, his involvement with Newsweek Romania.
Please tell me who you are and why are you here?
I'm 56, from the U.S., from North Carolina originally, so live in Hawaii now, so flew all the way from Hawaii here. So the question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean, we're battling a situation here where, the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, we need to stand up for that. That is the most important thing in the world, is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united so that we feed each other and make sure that, we all move forward as one collective whole unit. So, we feel the pain of one country's failure and their conflicts, and we enjoy the successes of other countries that are doing good, and we all work together. And for some reason, Russia does not grasp this concept that we're all one unit, and we have to get along and work together and be normal human beings.
So he goes on for 8 minutes. He actually goes on to say that he testified or had meetings with the Helsinki Commission, which is a U.S. government-backed commission that contains figures like Paul Massaro, one of the biggest fanatics, online fanatics associated with the Ukraine proxy war, who's constantly calling for Putin's assassination, celebrated the death of a Russian in a dolphin attack just because he was Russian, someone who had nothing to do with the Russian government. As we mentioned, Ryan Routh's Twitter account has been nuked. It was suspended arbitrarily. Kind of like mine, like he didn't violate any terms. It's just been hidden from the public, and Facebook has suspended his account. It's so weird what's happening. I mean, this is...
Well, Max, listen, in fairness to you, I don't want to compare your Twitter account to Ryan Routh's because, for example, I don't know Twitter's terms of service, but perhaps if you get caught being involved in violence, especially maybe against the former president, maybe that is a violation of the terms of service. Whereas you were just being a journalist. So, yeah. I mean, I think you might be being too kind to Ryan Routh here because maybe there's something in there that says you can't engage in violence. I don't know.
Yeah, you actually are right. There are real world activities that you are forbidden from. They're not specified in the terms of service, but I guess they can justify it. It's pretty obvious. DHS or one of the agencies went to Elon just as they did to Meta and everywhere else he maintained an account and told them to basically erase history. And I don't know what they gain from that.
Well, what they gain is it's embarrassing that a guy who just tried to assassinate President Trump is a fanatic supporter of the proxy war in Ukraine.
There it is.
I mean, that's what
there it is. And here he is stating, I'm willing to fly to Krakow and go to the border of Ukraine to volunteer and fight and die. Will I be able to cross the border without a visa? Every citizen around the globe should be running to Ukraine to fight. Can I be the example? We must win. Well, he was allowed in despite having a 2002 conviction for a standoff. He was convicted of possessing a weapon of mass destruction, which was an assault rifle. No problem. He just cruised on in.
Yeah.
And
and that's the point to me. I mean, listen, I'm inclined to believe, and again, we won't know until there's more investigation, but I mean, the best case scenario to me, from the point of view of like the U.S. proxy, like the people waging the proxy war, is that he wasn't actually very connected. He wasn't very on the inside. He was trying to be. He really wanted to fight, apparently. Ukraine claims he was denied the right to fight. But the point is, as you said, wars like this attract unstable people and they radicalize people. And this seems to be exactly what happened here.